you shed some light on what are the company law exemptions that we're seeing right now?
Okay. Okay. There were a couple of things which I thought might be useful related to the labor law also. So if you want me to cover that, a couple of them,
Please,
yeah,
please.
which many of them has covered by Shweta and Anumida, but I thought a couple of them, and then I'll go to the company law, which then you can go. Couple of them which the organizations just I'm sorry. Yeah. So there are a couple of things like the PF EPF, which is helping both the to begin with the PF EPF, which is the most standardized things everybody would have. So in that, it is helping employees to have some money in their hand, that everybody is aware that it is 12% normally. So the government announced that it will be 10% for the employee contribution. And then the employers, the companies would have to put the 14% into it. So there'll be some liquidity available, cash liquidity available with the employee. Then another thing which of course they're related to PF, that you are allowed to take 75% of the amount which is there as a one-time withdrawal, which you can do, which is another thing which is that everybody can take money, because generally we can't withdraw money from the PF as of now. So that is another thing to get cash in the hand of the employees. Another thing for the companies are the filing of returns, which Shweta covered to some extent. Most of the returns have been extended. At least I have, like Shweta mentioned, payment of wages, of course. After that, interstate migrant, building and other construction, all these returns, anybody who wants to share in the paucity of the time, I can share those lists. Pramita, they can, ask for an email and I can share that list across, which might be helpful for them to actually share it across. Yeah. Okay. And then there are one important thing which I wanted in the labor law, one last thing, and then I can go to this is the reference related to apprentice, which Shweta probably let me cover that, since that was not a part of your conversation. So any trade apprentice who you are using and his term is incomplete, so you have to mandatorily extension should be provided to them, and provide them stipend also in the same thing for the maximum duration of 6 months. So most of the manufacturing units have apprentice which are there with them. So there you will have to see that you extend that across, and 6 months you have to pay them. That is there. Then coming to the MCA guidelines, which is there are of course a lot of tax reliefs. I have a lot of them listed. SEBI reliefs also I have listed. I can send you, because I don't know how many companies are listed companies here. So that is the thing which I thought that Pramita, you can share it across. Sure. Okay, going to the MCA, the reduction of compliance burden begins with the requirement of physical meeting of the director. That has been relaxed it has been really relaxed till the 30th of June. Hence, board meetings may be held through video conferencing or other audio, which was there earlier, but in this you can have it completely, ensuring the compliance of Rule 3 of the company's rules. Okay. Then, of course, I don't need to. Then I have the bankruptcy, which I'm not covering because that's not part of this thing, which I have it here. Then you have the section 173 of the compliance. Gap between 2 consecutive board meetings shall not be more than 120 days, which was specific. So that is Sorry, anybody had a question? I'm sorry. Okay. Relaxation of 60 days have been provided in the gap of 2 consecutive board meetings till 30th now. Now the gap which is there, 2 consecutive board meetings may be extended to 180 days. That's a huge reduction in the compliance burden, which is again 180 days is 6 months, which gives you a lot of time to really go ahead and comply with that. Then for the para 7 of the independent directors provided under Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, independent directors of the company shall hold at least 1 meeting in the year without the attendance of non-independent directors. All the independent directors need to put together and meet together one. So for the financial year 1920, the non-fulfillment of this particular requirement shall not be treated as a violation, because this is treated as a violation. That's another very important. I'm only taking up the most important ones, because these are which has violations and which has penalties, and so therefore I thought I should take these. Then we have another important thing, which is as per section 72(2)(c) of the Companies Act. Deposit repayment reserve of 20% of deposit maturing in financial year 2021 is required to be treated before 30th, which are to be created, created before 34. The requirement to create such reserve may be complied till 36. So from April, it goes into the June. So that increases, number one, the compliance burden. Second, it increases liquidity in the hands of the company. So the company has some liquidity which is there with them. Then as per section 10A of Companies Act, a newly incorporated company, many of the companies have incorporated newly, to file declaration for commencement of business within 180 days of incorporation. So that is extension of additional 180 days is provided, which, so if you are a new company, so you need not worry that you are not, not complying with this. So you have another 180 days, so 6 months more. So literally that is nearly a year which you get to go ahead and declare of commencement of business. So that is because many of the business are not commencing because of that. So that is an important thing which comes in. Another important as per section 149, which is one of the important thing, where company shall have at least one director who stays in India for a total period of not less than 182 days during the financial year. That non-fulfillment of such minimum residency requirement shall not be treated as a non-compliance. That was a major non-compliance which was important. So hence that is again now not considered as a non-compliance. That is any specific compliance for people who are not here. Then more it is for listed companies. I would leave the listed part here, because Pramita, I think we can send that as a mail, because I can see the time it's going on, and since we already started a couple of minutes late.
Yeah.
So listed ones I can send it to people. That's not a problem at all.
All right. Great. Thank you so much, Jayashree, for that. Anu, quickly moving on to you, can you highlight what are the changes are you seeing in international compliance programs, and how do you think the Department of Justice and SEC would view it?
Sure. So, again, very important topic, but I don't know how much of it is going to be relevant to everybody here. But because we were covering the national compliances and all of that in this, I wanted to bring in the perspective of the international compliance programs that, again, US corporates or UK corporates are running across the world. The Department of Justice had given a compliance program resource guide in 2017, and it kind of, it mandates all the organization to go for an annual risk assessment. That annual risk assessment should then translate into what your compliance program will be for the year. Now, whatever we did in late 2019 as an annual risk assessment for 2020 has completely gone out of the window, because nobody fathomed COVID coming in, and nobody fathomed what the kind of challenges it's going to bring in. Now, what do we do? Do we continue with the same program that we were doing last year? Because obviously, whatever upgradation will be required to it cannot be assessed till the time we come out of it, because the challenges this whole scenario will bring in will be very visible only after we come out of this. So how do we handle that? Consciously, what we are trying to do, and even while this is one part of it, the other part of it is even the normal process that we were doing over the years, or what we had done in 2019, how much is it possible for us to do today? Any reasonable compliance program will have continuous compliance conditions, which would include something like, your due diligence of your third-party intermediaries, your dealers, distributors, your vendors. Then you would have training component of it. Then you would have remediation plans of it. So if I do, and this is one aspect. The other aspect is auditing and monitoring. The third aspect is your investigations. And out of these, all these aspects, how is COVID, challenged and, kind of helped, kind of made all of these near impossible to follow in the normal course of things. As a conscious compliance leader, what we do today is that for all of it, whatever is possible to do bench testing. So the due diligence requirements, organizations or our due diligence partners are not able to go out in the field and give us live information about our vendors, about our dealers and everything like that. So whatever is possible to do bench testing, we are doing those bench testing. We are covering all the information which is Googleable. Plus, we are taking additional undertakings and undertakings and declarations from those parties, and then the business has to go on. You can't really stop people from doing business. So, but till now, if we are not able to complete our due diligence, we can't go on and engage with those parties. So, what we are doing is we are doing bench testing. Like I said, we are taking undertakings and everything, and we are going ahead and executing them with undertaking that when we go out in the world and we find things against these undertakings and against our code of conduct, we will terminate without any liability. So having that documentation in place is very important. For remediation plan, also again, whatever is possible, I have a very strange challenge. For example, if I need any shareholder exited out of my partner or out of my vendor or my dealer, and the shareholder, and this is I'm talking about another country, the shareholding change cannot happen till the time somebody flows in and is in front of that ministry and signing those documents. So what do I do? This was the primary need of my remediation plan. If I balance out all of these black and white, I'm still going to insist that if whatever it takes, whatever your business suffers, my business suffers, if it is a black and white case, I need this shareholder exited. I am not doing a bench. This one I'm not going to do a documentary exercise. I have to get you exited out because that's a primary need of mine. So again, those assessments, black and white, the compliance officer is constantly on his toes to do that. The other thing that we are investing today is outside the US, and as per the requirements of the DOJ, resource guide, outside the US, there are very less compliance professionals who are actually aware of the provisions, for example, which are very easy for the US attorneys to remember, the Dodd-Frank Act and the Upjohn warnings, and again, resource guidance documents in 2012, 2017, 2019, which have been issued. So train the trainer is one thing that you can invest on today, which is possible to do that online, which is possible, and which will go a long way because you've never invested in all of that. You just assume that your compliance professional would know about it. So that is another thing which we are doing. Our auditing and monitoring activity has again gone out of the toss. We go to our dealer places, do audit monitoring. That is not happening. But again, we have changed our plan for this year. We have documented the change in the plan. We have had the compliance committee ratify it, and we have again indulged in remote testing for our auditing monitoring activities also. We ask our dealers, we ask our vendors to send out the transactions, and we do a remote testing on them. Finally, on investigations and corrective actions, there is no good investigation which does not happen face to face, because in an investigation you need to really look into the face of people and understand if they were guilty or not. This one we have completely stopped. We can't do it. But again, if there is sufficient evidence in the system, and if there is sufficient risk in the system, we have decided consciously to not do the investigation, but do the corrective action. So we assume that it is guilty because the Securities and Exchange Commission assumes that you would have done something bad. It is my prerogative to prove I haven't done wrong. So so there are places and decisions in which if there is an investigation requirement and there is enough risk in the system, and we have gone out and taken those decisions without going through an investigation process.
Understood.
This is how we are changing our international compliance program. These are the changes which are bringing in, and I go back to the same thing. Was my intent there or not? But many a times, and under international FCPA provisions, which is a major part of a compliance role for any compliance official which is in MNC, the intent sometimes doesn't matter. You have to prove it. That is how DOJ looks at it. That is how they would go out and penalize you, even if you have not performed a due diligence, even if your channel partner did not indulge in any corruption activity, still you went ahead and penalized us. I mean, us meaning the corporation, that corporation which I don't want to name it, but so they are not looking at evidence. They are looking at their own whims and fancies. How best to address their whims and fancies is to get your documentation right, get your intent right, and get your approvals right. I think that is what we are doing in international scene.
All right, great. Wonderful insights. Thank you so much. Shweta, coming to you for the last question due to the paucity of time. What are the challenges and concerns being faced by the organizations with respect to data privacy and protection?
Interesting. So data privacy, in today's time, all of us have been mandated to install an app called Arogya Setu by the government. That is a compulsory requirement. Now, if you look at this launch of the app, it happened in April sometime, and it tracks the location of the infected person, and it also informs you of the distance within which such infected person is from you, and therefore your entire location is now available with the government at all times, since you are compulsorily required to keep your GPS and your Bluetooth switched on at all times. So this could lead to what is the repercussion of this? This is leading to the violation of the privacy of the users of the application, and it also hands over your right of surveillance to the government. There can be a contrary argument that after the Supreme Court judgment in the case of Puttaswamy, the state does preserve the anonymity of individual, and it would legitimately assert a valid state interest in preservation of public health to design the appropriate policy intervention on the basis of data available. But then the state governments, in fact, I came across a very interesting information that Goa, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and I think Karnataka as well, they are using an app called Sprinkler, through which the government is collecting the sensitive personal information of the individuals. And the entity who is owning this app is not based out of India, it is based abroad. And therefore, all the personal data of the individuals of these states are now, being made vulnerable into the hands of this entity which is owning this app. So there was a petition which was filed in the High Court of Kerala with respect to this, and an interim order in April 2020 asking the state government to anonymize all data collected with respect to COVID-19 before sharing it with this app, and to inform the citizens from whom the data was taken that such data can be shared with this app or any third party, and obtain the consent of such citizens. And therefore the Kerala High Court had restrained the Sprinkler from committing any act which would have resulted in the breach of confidentiality of data collected under the contract with the state government of Kerala, and it also in fact prohibited it from exploiting such data directly or indirectly for commercial purposes or for advertising purposes or for sharing it with third party, that they have the access to this data relating to COVID-19. So the court also ordered this app to return all data to the state government of Kerala once the contractual obligations are over, and delete all the residual or secondary data in its possession. But this is a directive from the court. The data which is available with this app in the meanwhile till the entire situation comes under control is still vulnerable. And therefore, this is something which is a little worrying situation for us. Similarly, the NGOs, the central government, the state government, various other health authorities, they are also collecting a lot of individuals with respect to our individual data, the personal data or the sensitive personal data. And its use is subject to data protection laws in India. And the situation in India at the moment, the data protection laws are still to see the light of the day. And we are hugely dependent on the IT Act, read with the reasonable security practices and procedures of and sensitive personal data or information rules of 2011, which we call it as SPD rules. So they, along with the data protection laws, are the only limited laws which are available, and it contains specific provisions which govern the protection of personal data in India. So the SPDI rules have clearly classified the information in relation to physical data, in relation to psychological and mental health condition of a person as a sensitive personal data or information, that is SPDI, and any other information that relates to a natural person which is capable of identifying such person is as his personal information. So the public health authorities and the organizations, in fact corporations, are also able to collect personal information of individual in today's time. They are taking people's medical records, data relating to physical and mental health of the individuals, their body temperature. And these are informations which will be classified under the SPDI and under the data protection laws. And because the data protection law in India is still not yet developed as compared to the Western countries, for the subsidiaries of the Western countries, it becomes very, very critical for them to manage this kind of a data. So there are a lot of concerns in this regard that I can foresee. The other aspect is data security, because with the norms with respect to work from home, there is a certain vulnerability that the organizations are at the moment in. With the employees, some of them may have the integrity, some of them may not have the integrity. We have seen a surge of cyber threats that has happened. So data security is also hugely vulnerable in today's time as compared to what it was 3 months earlier. So there are a lot of steps which are required to be taken by the organization with respect to its data privacy, protection, and data security, all three of it in one go. I'm sure Anu also would have some light to throw on this in a more practical scenario.
Anu, do you have anything to add to what Shweta has already said?
I think we are in a even more stringent situation, Pramita, because for us, patient data is coming in detail. Medical practitioners' details are coming in a bunch of ways, and again, our issues are not just national, but what we are doing is, one, we are not transporting our data out to any outside servers. Thankfully, we have internal servers. So until we are very clear about where we are, one, that it is anonymized, number one, and number two, for what purpose it is being used, and number three, that we have ensured all consents when it is coming to any patient data collection or it is coming to any doctor data collection. These three are the basic steps that we are ensuring we have. Having servers nationally, consent, and third, anonymization of the data. Till the time we are clear about it. The other challenge that we are seeing that Shweta briefly touched upon was the Arogya Setu app challenge. In India, you still have a Disaster Management Act, and you still have a judicial precedent which kind of gives you the protection to the state to collect all of this data if it is for public interest. But in many countries where the data privacy laws are, they are much more established, it is even difficult for us as organization to do the testing for letting an employee inside. So we are struggling in many jurisdictions because the employees are saying no to being tested. That is their, that is the freedom that they are exercising, because the local law allows them to do that. If you are testing, you cannot have access to their reports, because then the privacy equation comes in. Now, if an employer has to let you inside the official premises, if he can't test you, if he can't, and we are not talking about temperature testing because that is what India has prescribed, but there are places where serology tests are prescribed, or where if there are manufacturing units, people are clamped in, you need to have serology tests because COVID doesn't show for the next 14, 15, whatever number of days. So if you can't test your employees, if you can't have access to their test reports, how do you monitor, how do you ensure that all of your other employees are not? getting infected. Worldwide, there is there's an internal medical campaign going on how we deal with it. I don't have an answer to it. I only have an answer to what I'm doing it in here in India, which is the 3 steps that I said. This is what we are doing. Even for example, we are hosting a lot of webinars because we are in the medical device, so all knowledge sessions on different therapies, and we are doing it on our virtual training platforms. When you're doing it on virtual training platforms, you kind of own the responsibility that this data should not be misused, not just by us, but by our other employees or by other people also. So anonymization, consent, and ensuring that it remains on national servers. That's all that that I have access to, or possibility of doing it in my current state.
Great. Thank you so much for that. We'll now open up for questions. I have already taken notes of for those who have put in their email IDs for Jayashree to send across the list to them. But please feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and we'll be happy to take on your questions. In the meantime, for us, for the speakers, if you can just, starting with Jayashree, if you can just, while we are getting in the questions, if you can give us your thoughts on what are the new parameters for the compliance department in the new world order after COVID-19. Jayashree?
Sorry, I did not unmute. I started talking without unmuting. I'm sorry. Okay. So I certainly the new. I think a lot of them have been covered by Shweta also, and by Anu. There are a lot of things which been covered. I thought I'll take this time a little bit on certain states. If I can, help people. There'll be people from different states. So if I can just give them a couple of things related to states, if that is fine, because most of the things have been covered by Shweta, and it will be replicating. So if that is okay, Pramita?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So because the states related things, I did not find too much of time to cover that. So there are just covering main states, like for example, Andhra Pradesh has certain guidelines, again a specific guidelines. There are, just to tell you also, there are guidelines and orders. So it is there are guidelines which is not like there is any specific thing to be covered by the employers, but you can use those guidelines to see that things don't happen in your organization. The COVID related stuff measures are taken. So there are a lot of guidelines which is there in Andhra Pradesh, which again I will share. Andhra Pradesh, Goa, Goa specifically the ITITS, they are providing some travel pass, and that is there on a particular link which I'll share on the chat box if required for Goa, people who are in Goa. And again in Gujarat, there are certain environment audits which are important, and I'm just taking the important ones. The environment audits, that dates have been relaxed for them in Gujarat. These dates have been relaxed, not on all states, but in Gujarat specifically, they have relaxed this. Also, of course, the MSME concession to consumers and the MSME establishment electricity, that has been again in Gujarat, which is there. And the paid leaves, of course, have been covered by Shweta, so I'm not going to cover that across in any other state. And Madhya Pradesh has got again a lot number of, like every shop and establishment having, they have very specified what is the wages which need to pay. There are certain dates which have been given by the Madhya Pradesh government. So that is again something which I can again share. And I think that is all with, of course, there are air conditioned. I'm surprised, I should share this. There are certain air conditioning guidelines which has come up, for all offices. And that is one thing specific, which probably I can share this notification, which says how is a central notification, how and what you should do with the air condition, because that should not spread the COVID virus across within the organization.
Yes.
So that is one very, very important, which, sorry, I slipped it out earlier. It's good that I went through the list, which I had mentioned, so I'll share that across. Pramita, if we can just, share that notification across and email it to everybody, because that is going to be very, very important across. So I think that would conclude, there are many more, of course, but as I'm sharing the list so people can get it across there.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Anu, your last thoughts on what are the new parameters for the compliance department in the new world order?
What I see from myself, Pramita, I mean, we are moving from being chief compliance officers to chief conscience officers, and it is a variety of things that are coming, like, sometimes I feel the entire burden of preserving employments in my organization is now resting on me. So when people ask me, what are you doing as charity? I'm saying I'm doing social work and preserving employment in my organization. So that being one is something, it's interesting. I'll leave it for others to share their thoughts on it.
That's right. Good. Excellent.
Wonderful.
And Shweta, please, your thoughts?
My thoughts are twofold. One is the very important aspect that I see is a robust mechanism will be required to be put in place by the management against the corruption acts and bribery that we are going to foresee is my feeling. Second is conflict of interest, which is another very key ethical and legal challenge that will have to be addressed at various instances, right from the public procurement to bidding for tenders to in this kind of a very highly volatile market, to hiring policies in a phase of layoffs and retrenchments. Third is insider trading, and despite having robust laws on the subject, the SEBI has recently extended various deadlines for numerous compliances pertaining to listed companies in India, which may be necessary to curb the pandemic, and it gives way to exploitation of the situation. Like Jayashree, I have a long list of the compliance, the relaxations that have now been given by SEBI and by the regulators. Then the fair and objective hiring process, which will be required with respect to layoffs and the forced exits of the employees which are underway, and emphasis shall be on reducing the numbers, and therefore there is a necessity to bring in more objectivity in the hiring process. As Anu said, she has now become the key instrument in safeguarding the employments of people. And then the last would be the data privacy and protection, because India is at the verge of introducing the laws on data privacy and data protection, which was expected to take place in the last parliament session, but it will happen very soon. And therefore there is a need to hasten the prospect of safeguarding the data of companies, which has never been felt more. And the law will have to provide the pandemic specific nuances and challenges. And therefore the stringent implementation of law in the near future is the requisite, and coping with the same will be severely challenging for the businesses, and thereby leading to more reliance on the compliance and ethics officers. So this is my last few cents on this.
Yeah, Pramita, I think that's
comprehensive.
Yeah, Pramita, just to last one line with Anu and Shweta. So, like we said, it's transforming from a chief compliance officer to the chief conscience officer, So that is how it's transforming now with all the things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Indeed. All right, great. Thank you so much, ladies. We haven't got any questions per se on the group, but if anyone from the audience has any specific questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Or we can respond to it later as well, Pramita. In case there are questions that you receive, you can share it with us, and
we can always respond to it later as well.
Yeah, they can direct to the person whom they want the answer, and it can.
Yeah, feel free to email me or WhatsApp me, and I'll connect you accordingly as well.